Hey Ken, this is Greg. Even though I brought my video cam home, I decided it was just easier just to shoot from my own computer room and use the video cam that I have on my computer. It was going to take some doing to get it set up how I wanted to. You can see in my background behind me there's like a rattan divider screen back there, and that was what I was going to use in another room, but that room is unheated and it's kind of cold out, so I would have had to set up my tripod, my camera, and all that. So I just decided to come to my room and try it in here. It was too light. I didn't like the lighting here in my room. My windows don't have curtains on them here. So I brought my screen in here, and sunlight was still shining in behind me, behind the screen. So as you can tell, I've got a couple blankets that I put over the screen to keep the light down. However, you notice I'm shooting without my glasses today. Even with this background with the screen and everything, there was still a tremendous light reflection off of my lenses and on my glasses. So I said, just the heck with this. Well, I'll just take the glasses off. I can see pretty well without them, but I'd go ahead and present this way. Behind my screen, to my left, is a Farnsworth radio. I know who Philo Farnsworth was, but I think it's a 1938, if I recall right, 38, 39, something like that. It's the first radio I ever got. It's a floor model. Has a wonderful, oh my gosh, wonderful sound to it. It needs to be repaired now. It's got a couple things wrong with it, but like many of the radios back in those days, it had RCA plug, an RCA jack that you'd plug in your phonograph to, because early phonographs didn't have speakers, and you had to plug them into your radios. I'm sure I'm telling you something you already know. But it does. It has a wonderful, wonderful sound when it's in excellent condition, and I used it for a long time instead of a speaker on my computer. When I was watching something or listening to something, or just wanted to get some good sound. Anyway, we're continuing on today, and the trial has already started. I believe I talked to you last time about Heck Tate went on the stand, and then Bob Ewell, and I know I did, because I'd asked the kids, why did Harper Lee construct Bob Ewell the way she did, excuse me, and you gave me the correct answer as well. I asked them before we left school on Wednesday, because Wednesday was our last day of school this week, why did Harper Lee construct Mayella Ewell the way she did. Now, we didn't get through all this chapter on Wednesday, and I won't cover. I only got about 3 or 4 pages read with the kids on Wednesday, so we'll cover the rest of this chapter, on Monday. And the students' goal is to finish the book by next Friday, because you're gonna think I'm stupid, probably. They're 8th grade kids, but I'd asked them a week before last. I said, guys, y'all remember when you had Valentine's Day parties in your elementary classes? And they said, yeah. It was so great, so fun. So we're going to have a Valentine's Day party. They're all going to bring in the boxes, and they're going to give Valentines to each other. I'm going to bring in some cookies, some heart-shaped cookies or whatever. They're going to bring in some other stuff. And they wanted to start watching the movie a week from Monday. But I never let them watch the movie until until after they've taken the test. So anyway, they're in a desperate mood to get about 100 pages read in class, a little over 100 pages in class between Monday and Friday of this next week. So Wednesday, I've got the kids for 2 class periods in a row. One's the regular class, and the second we just for our middle school, for both math and English, we give a second period too as well. We call that the lab class, in which we can give other things that reinforce the lesson, or expand the lesson, or take them to a different area. I traditionally do grammar during that period. But last Wednesday, we spent almost 2 entire periods just reading the book. I had given them a schedule last week. I said, guys, we need to get 16 pages done per day out of this book that I'm reading to them with them. And so it just takes a while, as you can probably guess. I have frequent pauses as I want to discuss things, a paragraph or a sentence or even just a few words here and there, things that I just need to point out to them, whether they're background information or something that I think that they don't know that they should know. Excuse me. So anyway, that's where we stand today. Like I said, I'm in my room. I'm at my own home. We got snow and ice. We didn't get as much as I said we were going to, but it was certainly enough to call off schools and shut down some businesses, for a day. So I had to have online meetings Thursday with all my classes, and today we just had to post assignments out there for them to work on independently. So I really haven't even seen any students. Actually, we started reading this chapter that I'm getting ready to discuss with you. We read, the first few pages. It's chapter 18, first few pages of that online yesterday. So anyway, this chapter is about Mayella Ewell on the stand. I want to go back a chapter or two. I'm sure you remember is when Atticus had a bunch of visitors that came to his house. It was on a Saturday evening. Tom Robinson was being transferred from the Abbotsville jail to Macomb jail on Sunday, and this group of men came over on a Saturday night. Jim and Scout thought that they were their enemies, at least Atticus's enemy. Turns out it was the sheriff, Heck Tate, and some other local people, in-town people, and they were just talking over bringing Tom Robinson to the Macomb jail on a Sunday night. The trial was going to start Monday morning. And they were concerned that something was going to happen. They were particularly concerned about the people from Old Sarum, which is where the Cunninghams live out, rural, the farmers, whatever. But anyway, one of the last things that Atticus said was this. He said, my objective in defending Tom Robinson is that I really want to point out, I want to present the truth. And then he made a statement. He said, and we all know what the truth is. And of course, the truth is that the Ewells made it up for whatever reason, which we'll find out later in the book if you probably already remember. But that the story about Tom Robinson was not true. And at the same time, Atticus knew he was going to lose the trial, even though he knew the truth, and everybody else in town probably knew the truth as well. But we get started on this. I'm getting my book because there's something I want to point out. This is, by the way, this is the book I read out of. I have a copy here at my house. I have a copy here at school as well. And if you've seen my Facebook post, I always buy 2 copies of this every year. They're $25 at Barnes & Noble. And my wife and I went over a couple weeks ago, and they were having a sale, like a weekend sale. Every hardback book in the store was on sale for half price. So I picked up my 2 copies. This is a replica of the original book. This is the original cover for To Kill a Mockingbird. And I picked up my 2 copies that I get every year, and I have a drawing at the end of this book. I asked the students, I said, I asked them who would be interested in owning a copy of this book, and for everyone who raises their hand, it's not everybody every year, but it's most of the students every year. Whoever raises their hand, I put their name, write their name on a piece of paper, put all the, I have a blind drawing, and I give away 2 copies a year. And interesting story. Had a young fellow, I think he's a junior this year in high school. When he was in 8th grade, he won the book. He wasn't the best of students that I had, but he was a nice kid. I rather enjoyed him. And we were finished with the book, and he won it. And he made this statement. He said, "Mr. Burton, when you die, and we're all of us who have won the book over the years, I'm going to get everybody together. And when you're lying there in your coffin, we're all going to put our copies of this book in your coffin with you," which I thought was an interesting but senseless for me gesture. My body will be there. I won't be there. But my spirit will be gone, of course, to be with the Lord. But I thought it was a nice gesture on his part, just a sentimental gesture at any rate. So anyway, I wanted to get along here in this chapter, and Mayella is on the stand, and of course she's backwoods, she's ignorant, she's uneducated. Nobody in the family can read or write. Well, I take that back. She made a statement later in this chapter. She said, "There's two of us that could two in our family that can read or write, and the rest of us don't see any need of read or writing. So none of us got much of an education." So she's created as the perpetual chip on her shoulder, just like her dad, just like everybody else in the family. Everybody's out to get them. No one likes them. No one cares about them, and they're all out to just make life miserable for the Yule family. And that's her thought pattern. All right, she understands at least enough to know that everybody in the community doesn't like the Yule family, and so one of the characteristics that was a contrast to her as compared to all the other Yules was that she at least bathed. Bob Yule, he came into court the other day, freshly cut hair, freshly shaved face. His face was all red. You can tell it was fresh, and it was different than the way he normally was. But she is a little bit different from that aspect, but not for every aspect. So anyway, she has like I said, she has a chip on her shoulder. It's as much a class thing as it is anything else. She's the lowest class. She's resentful of everyone else in town and even the farmers. And she, even before she got talking, the judge, she wouldn't acknowledge anybody because she made the statement she was afraid of Atticus, even though Atticus had not even been talking to her yet or cross-examining her on the witness stand yet. And the judge finally had to just intervene and said, "Look, you got to do this. You got to take care of this." And I think I'm shaking my desk. All right. So anyway, there's a part I wanted you to see. Judge Taylor is actually now talking to Mayella to try to get her just to talk, because she wouldn't even talk to the prosecutor, immediately. Judge Taylor scratched his thick white hair. It was plain that he had never been confronted with a problem of this kind. "How old are you?" he asked, if you remember the girl from the movie, how she talks. 19 and a half, Mayella said. Judge Taylor cleared his throat and tried unsuccessfully to speak in soothing tones. "Mr. Finch has no idea of scaring you," he growled. "And if he did, I'm here to stop him. That's one thing I'm sitting up here for. Now, you're a big girl, so you just sit up straight and tell the..." And he just paused when he got to the word "the." His next word was obviously going to be "truth," but he paused right before he said that. He says, "Now, you're a big girl, so you just sit up straight and tell us what happened to you. You can do that, can't you?" And again, it was apparent for all concerned that people who had any idea whatsoever was going on in town, who had heard about this, that the Yules were lying. They were just straight out lying. And she got herself, just rather flustered, and again, she didn't want to talk because she thought Atticus was out to get her. And I lost my place. I was going to say something else, but I closed my book and put it over next to me. But anyway, so that's our one of our initial introductions to Mayella Yule. Well, finally, when Atticus got the chance to examine her on the witness stand, well, actually, this is before Atticus. This was Mr. Gilmer, the prosecuting attorney, the solicitor. But she comes along and she starts telling her story, and she says she invited Tom Robinson inside the fence. What kind of a fence they had, if you remember reading it, it wasn't a real fence. It was just stuff that they got out of the dump where they live and just stacked them up, poles and old stuff. And so apparently, at least back in those days, you didn't go in somebody's yard unless you were invited to. And so she was telling the story that she needed something done. She wanted Tom to bust up an old chifforobe, if you remember from the movie, a chifforobe. All right, now I didn't know what a chifforobe was the first time I encountered this word, so I had to look it up. But my younger son married a girl from Alabama, and part of what she has in that's her personal belongings that's in their house now, she owns a chifforobe. So I've actually got to see a chifforobe. When I was growing up, my brothers and I had a freestanding wardrobe in our bedroom, and that's basically what a chifforobe is. It opens up, and you have place for where you can hang clothes on one side, and then there's drawers on the other side. You can store socks and undergarments and stuff like that, shirts or whatever. They're folded in the other side. So apparently Bob Ewell had retrieved this old chifforobe out of the dump, and he asked Mayella, according to her story, he asked Mayella to bust it up, to use their words, so he could use it for kindling. Well, anyway, so she invited Tom Robinson into the yard for him to bust up the chifforobe. And then her story goes that she was going to go in the house and get a nickel for him to pay him for his work. And when she got in the house, I guess according to her story, Tom followed her in her house, from which he commenced to assault her and eventually, in her story, to rape her. So anyway, that's her story. Now, next page over from where I read before, I want you to notice, you have to be, sometimes you have to be sharp, when you're reading things. There's a time lapse in her story. I know you have kids, and I have 4 of my own, plus I've been a teacher for a long time. And you realize at times they're telling you a story, and it's not a lie. What they're telling you is not a lie, but it's either not the right sequence of events, or they're telling it, to their best advantage to make themselves sound really good. Well, there's a time lapse in Mayella's story that she's telling Mr. Gilmer here. All right, I'll read this. "Did you scream?" said Mr. Gilmer. "Did you scream and fight back?" "Reckon I did. Hollered for all I was worth. Kicked and hollered loud as I could." "Then what happened?" said Mr. Gilmer. "I don't remember too good, but next thing I knew," and here's where the time gap is right here. "Next thing I knew," and you have to understand what she's about ready to say here is the truth, but she has framed it in a lie. All right, "I don't remember too good, but next thing I knew, Papa was in the room standing over me, hollering, 'Who done it? Who done it?' Then I sort of fainted, and the next thing I knew, Mr. Tate was pulling me up off the floor and leading me to the water bucket." Do I think that what she said here, next thing I knew, Papa was in the room standing over me, hollering, 'Who done it? Who done it?' I think that's 100% the truth. However, she left out the segment. If what she is telling is true, and of course I don't believe it is, and neither does anyone else, but even if what she is saying is true, we're missing the time element in there of where did Tom Robinson go, and what precipitated this event. Here's what I think really happened, and when at a later point, Atticus will do a good job of explaining this. Here's what really happened. Bob Ewell caught her, and maybe Tom Robinson for that matter too, according to his testimony. I'm sure that's true. But it wasn't nearly anything at all like the story Mayella told. Tom Robinson skedaddled out of there. He got out of the house. He ran out of the house. He was in the house, as if you remember from the book. He was actually in the house, but under completely different circumstances. And Bob Ewell saw them, like he said, like he testified, through the window. He came running in. At this point, nothing had happened very little had happened between Tom Robinson and Mayella. Just to go forward, because you've already read the story and seen the movie before, Mayella basically invited him in because she wanted him to kiss her. She wanted to kiss him. She wanted to hug him. And she grabbed Tom Robinson around the waist, according to future reading. Tom Robinson wanted nothing to do with it, and he tried to get away at that. But it was at that moment that Bob Ewell saw them. And he came running in, and Tom Robinson went running out, and he couldn't catch Tom by the time Tom left. At that point, that's when Bob Ewell came into the house, and he just beat the daylights out of Mayella. So at that point, she says, the next thing I knew, this is after he had beat her up, the next thing I knew, Papa was in the room, standing over me, hollering, "Who done it? Who done it?" So Bob Ewell had already concocted this story. They were going to charge Tom Robinson with rape. After Bob Ewell himself had beat up Mayella, and they were going to make it look like Tom Robinson had done all this. Now, there's a strange reason why they concocted this story, which we'll get to in a little bit, a couple chapters, and why Mayella went along with it. But like I said, she was telling the truth here. This really did happen. The next thing I knew, Papa was in the room, standing over me, hollering, "Who done it? Who done it?" I can picture this now. After he'd finished beating her up, with his left hand, "Who done it?" Telling her whatever language he was using, probably not girl. All right, but here's your story. We're gonna say Tom Robinson done this to you, and you're not gonna mention that I hit you, that I beat you up. And he's standing over, "Who done it? Who done it?" All right, and so he's getting his story down, from the very beginning. So when Atticus finally got to cross-examine Mayella on the witness stand, he was, he's very gentle, very kind when he started. Another drink of water, sorry. Tell you a quick story about my water drinking. I drink water all the time, every day. I always have a bottle, and I always have multiple bottles in class. I always drink water at home when I'm here. For a number of years, from my late 30s on, I started suffering from gout, which of course is it's more of a dietary problem than anything else. I love sugar, all right, and I love protein. I love steak and roast and stuff like that. Well, I've had two really extreme bouts with gout it's really more than two, but the two that worst. One of them, the first one, I had, 10 years maybe so ago, and I was laid up on the couch for a week, Monday through Friday. The pain was so intense. When the pain for gout comes, there's not a lot you can do unless I didn't even know there was even medicine for it, so I just wrote it out. But anyway, I was laid up for a week, and I looked up. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't. Nothing entertained me. I couldn't turn on the TV. I wasn't interested in watching anything. I wasn't interested in listening even to my old radio programs. I wasn't interested in listening to music. I couldn't read. The pain was so intense. From Monday until Saturday morning, Friday night, Saturday morning, during that entire time, I got 8 hours cumulative of sleep. The pain was that bad. And then the last really bad bout I had was must have been 2000. I don't remember when it was. It was 2014, maybe 2013, and we were at my daughter's for Thanksgiving, and I couldn't get off the couch when it was time for us to leave, and I missed 3 days of school. The pain was so bad, and I promised myself at that point, this is never going to happen to me again. I've got control over this. Whatever I have to do, change my diet, whatever. Since that time, I consume water all the time, and I haven't had a single bout since then. I love soft drinks, and that's a big no-no, for people who suffer from stuff like that. And so I quit drinking soft drinks for a long time. Every once in a while, I'll have one now, but I drink water all the time, and flushes me out, keeps me. I haven't had a single bout of gout since that time. But anyway, I don't know where I got off on that. I just had to take a drink of water. Anyway, so Atticus started cross-examining Mayella on the witness stand, and he started out gently, but he finally got to the point, and he asked her directly, He said, "Who beat you? Was it Tom Robinson or was it your dad?" And she got real flustered on the witness stand, and she couldn't keep her story straight. And he caught her and saying some things, and then she changed her testimony a little bit, changed her memory, the things that she remembered, and it was obvious to anyone who was there what was going on. She had a story, as you know, if you've ever known anybody, been associated with people who lie, they have to continually lie and they always have to remember their stories that they've told, and eventually they don't get everything straight. And she was lying as well, and she wasn't getting everything straight. So by the time her testimony is over, she's glad when it's over, and so I guess Atticus is as well. And there was a couple times during this chapter, as Scout was relating the story, she said, Atticus is over by the window. It was like he was trying to make a decision about something, and you got to remember the circumstances in which he's cross-examining Mayella Ewell. He can't come on as this big ogre. He needs to be gentle, because if he's not, that'll influence the jury. Even though probably the jury already truly knows the story, they're going to kind of look on pity with Mayella Ewell, especially if Atticus is heavy-handed in his cross-examination. So it doesn't end well for Mayella. It's obvious to anyone who is in any way, has a sense of right and wrong or fairness or evenness or whatever, that it's a story that she and her dad have concocted, and that she, even though she told things that were true, that they weren't true. They were only partially true. They weren't true in the context that she was telling them. So anyway, we finish with the with the cross-examination of Mayella, and once again, how did Harper Lee create the entire Ewell family? These are just despicable, unlikable. There is no way, shape, or form that the reader could in any way, shape, or form even sympathize with the Ewell family. They are the source of all their own problems. And they blame other people, and they don't get along with anybody. One of the most poignant parts of the testimony that Mayella gave, that when Atticus was talking to her, examining her on the stand, he asked, first of all, he asked how old she was. She'd already told the judge she's at 19 and a half. And he said, "How many brothers, sisters you have?" And she didn't say 7, she said 7. Which, again, just shows her ignorance. Doesn't mean she's stupid by any stretch of the imagination. She's forced to be a survivor. But she says sebum. But one of the saddest parts of all of her testimony, and it shows to the degree, and I think Atticus mentioned this later in his summation to the jury, she's a prisoner of her own world, of her dad's world, in which he keeps her. And he asked her, he says, "Tell me about your friends. Do you have any friends?" And she looked at him rather quizzically. She didn't even really know what he was talking about. He said, "People your own age, people that you do things with." And she said, "No." And so she is basically a prisoner in her own home. And not just a prisoner, a social prisoner. She's a prisoner because of her ignorance. Not her stupidity, of her ignorance, because she never received an education, can't read or write, has no prospects for the future because of her ignorance. If you remember from the story, A Christmas Carol, who the two children that came out was one of the ghosts between the legs, either past or present. I don't know which one it was. And these two children, one was named Poverty, and the other was named Ignorance, and that was the curse of the poor people that were mentioned in that story, poverty and ignorance. And that's pretty much the same curse that Mayella is suffering from here. She's trapped, but to make it even worse, she's trapped in a place where she doesn't even know that she's trapped. She is basically, even though she hates everybody around her, she's content to live the way she is. She's at an age where she could escape if she wanted to, but she doesn't. And that's a very sad commentary on all the Yule family. And as Atticus had said earlier in the book, that's the way they've been for 3 generations. So it just keeps on, self-perpetuating. The Yule family does. My big question is, how does anyone marry a Yule? How did their mother, who's dead, how did she ever get attached with Bob Yule? And we all know people that have situations like that. There's plenty of people I went to school with, and I thought, they got together and they got married. I thought, man, that'll never work. And they proved me wrong, of course. Most of them did. But I just wonder how, first of all, how did Bob Yule snag himself a wife? And secondly, what kind of a woman would marry him and produced 8 children and live in such squalor as what they are forced to live with? And the only reasonable answer I can come up with is, it was somebody like them, somebody else, just like the Yules. Or it may have been a Yule, may have been a cousin, or what. Who knows? I don't really know or understand. But anyway, so the Yules are a sad family because of their poverty and their ignorance, and yet you can only feel sorry for them so far, because really they're the source of their own poverty and their own ignorance. So anyway, that's where we end this chapter today. I don't think there's anything more without me glancing at the book that I want to talk about. But come Monday, I'll have the next chapter for you as well. This is the testimony of Tom Robinson. And as you know, if you've read the book, there is one part in this chapter. Tom stood up because Atticus asked him to, so that Mayella could identify him. And as he stood, Jim got very interested, and he said, look, his left arm is a foot shorter than his right arm. And Reverend Sykes told him, said, yeah, when he was a child, he got his arm caught in a cotton gin. I think it was owned by Link D's. He got his arm caught in a cotton gin, tore all the muscles away from the bone. It's been useless ever since, and it shriveled up. It was, as he said, a foot shorter than the other one. Okay, as you well know, and as my kids don't know yet, but they'll find out Monday, that made it impossible for him, A, to have punched Mayella on the right side and beat her continually with his right hand on the right side of her face, because he would have hit her left side. And B, it made it impossible for him to hold her down. And as Atticus questioned Hecate, said there were marks all around. He says her gullet, her neck, finger marks all around her neck, and that would be impossible for a one-armed man to have done that. And if there was ever any doubt whatsoever to Tom's innocence, I mean that's the clincher right there. He could not have committed the crime he was accused of. So anyway, I'll leave it there, and we'll continue this on Monday. We'll get to the next chapter. All right, Ken. I hope this one comes out as good as the other ones have, and I'll see you. Hope tomorrow's a better day than today for you. See you, Ken.